102 degrees, and you could feel every one of them today. We're headed into a multi-day heat wave. The first Colorado Democrat in Congress to call for President Biden to step aside. We'll hear her reasoning and my conversation with the only vocal Biden defender in our state's delegation.
I don't think Joe Biden is going to drop out of the race because I tell him to.
There were signs inside the Colorado Bureau of Investigation that their star data analyst was tampering with evidence. Tonight, I'll look at why those concerns never made it to the top. And I hope you made it somewhere, anywhere that was not stifling hot today, because that alone is good news to bring us home on a Friday.
My good news is cooling off in the lake at Chatfield Reservoir.
All that tonight on Next. You have hot plans for this weekend, like it or not. A record 102 degrees in Denver today, and that heat is settling in through Monday. New daily record beats the old high of 101 set back in 1971. It's our second day over 100 this year, and there are likely two more coming this weekend. The kind of heat that starts early and builds. By 10 a.m., we're at 91 degrees. We were in the triple digits in Denver by 1 p.m. and stayed there as we head now into the evening. Spring and meteorologist Lauren Robinson. Lauren, we know that this is not the kind of heat that they see in Las Vegas, they see in Phoenix, but it is hot for Denver, and we know that the most dangerous heat is when it does not let up at nighttime. So where are we headed tonight?
You know, and that's exactly right. One thing to note is heat is the highest death caused by weather-related activities. So you do really want to pay attention to this heat, and there is no relief during the overnight hours. And yes, it does get hotter in areas like Phoenix and Vegas, but that does not mean that 102, 101, 100 is not dangerously hot, even here in Denver with our very high elevation at that. Now, today we did make it to 102, which did break our existing record of 101 that was set on this day in 1971, but we have several days to go with more potential breaking highs. We're going to see potentially a high of 101 tomorrow, which could break our existing record of 100 degrees. The same goes for Sunday, where we're expecting a high of 102, the hottest day of our stretch going into next week. And then even as we move into Monday, we're still going to be pretty hot. We're not going to be in the triple digits, but upper 90s. Does it feel any different? Still going to be very hot even as we go into our Monday. Other highs all across the Front Range and Eastern Plains, several areas in the triple digits. We're even seeing 104 out in Grand Junction, 80s and 90s even up in the mountains. 100 right now out at DIA, mostly sunny, a little breezy with winds coming in from the north-northeast at 16 miles per hour. But because of this, we do have several areas under heat advisories through the weekend from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. with temperatures expected to be in the triple digits for 3 days in a row. In addition to that, we do have more air quality alerts across the urban corridor and down southward through Pueblo. And then taking a look at our HD Doppler radar, we have some moisture turning across the southwestern corner of the state, while the rest of us are nice and dry. We go into the overnight hours. We could see a pop-up storm across the northern plains. Very unlikely. We're going to stay mostly dry and mild with overnight lows pretty warm in nearly 70 degrees for our lows over the next few days. So we're going to continue to watch for those temperatures in the triple digits during the weekend. We start to cool off toward the middle of next week with more storm chances.
This hot, dry weather certainly has firefighters anxious. They jumped all over a small fire that popped up today above Boulder near the NCAR Mesa lab southwest of the CU campus. What they're calling the dinosaur fire has burned about 3 acres so far. No evacuations up there, just a warning that some people nearby should be ready to go if ordered. The fire has not grown significantly throughout this afternoon. Congresswoman Brittany Pettersen from Jefferson County is now the first Democrat in Colorado's congressional delegation to call on President Joe Biden to drop his re-election campaign. Pettersen, who's a freshman member in a relatively safe Democratic seat, released a statement this morning saying that Biden should, quote-unquote, save our country by stepping aside and letting what she called a capable Democratic leader run instead. Pettersen didn't specify which Democrat that should be. Pettersen's call does mirror a concern that we've also heard from Colorado's Democratic Senator Michael Bennet, who said earlier this week that inaction right now from Democrats could cost them the White House in November. Pettersen used the same word. Bennett stopped short of telling Biden to call it quits. Our next conversation tonight is with the only member of Colorado's congressional delegation who's been a staunch defender of Biden's re-election campaign lately. Congresswoman Diana DeGette of Denver says the voters reaching out to her office overwhelmingly want Biden to leave the race. But DeGette says he should stay in and work to turn the focus on the race back to Donald Trump.
That debate last week was devastating. It was terrible. But he's our nominee. So for us to throw him over for one debate performance is really not only logistically difficult, but it seems quite extreme given the success that he's had. He has a deep knowledge of the issues, particularly the international issues, and he has a commitment to the ideas protecting a woman's right to choose, protecting LGBTQ rights, education, all of those things that Democrats believe in. And so at this point, if he does decide to drop out of the race, he's the one that's going to decide that. There's really not going to be much of a way that the Democrats could all band together and cause him to not run.
Do you believe the reports, including from some of his staunchest supporters, that frankly he has good days and bad days, like a lot of people his age? Do you believe that?
I do.
Okay. So I guess my question is, what happens if there's a crisis with Russia or China or a terror attack, and President Biden is having one of his bad days like we saw at that debate, where he looks frail and dazed and confused, staring into space, mouth agape? You would prefer him over another Democrat to handle that crisis if he's in that kind of shape that day?
We've had a lot of crisis-filled days, and recently we had the attack by Hamas on Israel on October 7th. We've had the continuing saga in Ukraine. We've had issues in the United States over and over again, and I have never seen Joe Biden unable to handle those situations.
In my full 20-minute conversation with Congresswoman Diana DeGette, we also discuss whether Biden should stay in the race if he does not have a path to win it. We also talked about the very different but both lowered standards that we apply to Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Watch the full unedited YouTube interview on our next YouTube channel on 9news.com. So most of Colorado's top Democrats, electeds, have been ducking and dodging our questions about this, Marshall Zellinger, since President Biden's mental health, his fitness to serve, has been called into question. Literally weeks now, we've been asking folks for just, hey, where are you on this? What is your thinking? Still remains a slippery task.
And it shouldn't be, because my email inbox is often filled with announcements by our Colorado delegation. Sometimes we're offered interviews without asking with our congresspeople. But on this topic, Biden remaining in the presidential election, the question is simply, can we talk? Our senators are silent. No response to our question to talk, though, as you mentioned, Senator Michael Bennet was the first to speak out on CNN earlier this week, saying Biden risks having Democrats lose the White House and Congress. Congresswoman Brittany Petterson's team told me she will be sticking to their statement from earlier today when I was told no to an interview. I also got no's from Congressman Joe Neguse, Jason Crow, and Yadira Caraveo. She, though, might have the most at risk. Caraveo is in the congressional district with the closest voter affiliation split. The 8th congressional district in Weldon, Adams County is 50% unaffiliated, 25% Democrats and 23% Republicans. Caraveo only won by 1,600 votes 2 years ago. So if Bennett's concern is realized, her race could be impacted if there is doubt about Biden on the ticket.
Right, and this is important because when an elected official, when a member of Congress comes out and makes a statement about this situation, there's whether or not it has an impact on Joe Biden, which seems pretty minimal, right? The people who know Joe Biden say, you push him, he's only going to dig in. But when they come forward, either in support of him, in silence, or in opposition to him, they're also saying something to Coloradans, the people that they represent, about where their values and interests are.
Their values and interests, and also where it impacts them. I mean, Senator Michael Bennet doesn't have an election for a few years. Brittany Petterson won by 15 points in her election to become Congresswoman, and so then it becomes about yourself. And that's where my question to Congresswoman Yadira Caraveo would be is, you won by such a small margin. Don't you think your voters deserve to hear from you on this topic that is impacting voters nationwide?
Yeah, and it doesn't always break cleanly, right? We've seen a lot of vulnerable Democrats around the country come out against Biden. That's not what we're seeing in Colorado, right? Petterson's not vulnerable. Bennett's not vulnerable. They're the ones raising concerns. Diana DeGette, also not vulnerable. She's in his corner. So it doesn't always cleave cleanly along the lines that people would like to assume. Marshall, thank you. Hey, if you're interested, the worst job in Colorado is open again. It's not the pay for sure, because Aurora is willing to pay somebody, anybody really, to be about $200,000 to be their police chief. But the pressure and the scrutiny that comes with that job apparently is not worth it, because the city is now looking for its 7th police chief in 5 years. Like I said, worst job in Colorado. Heather Morris is the third interim police chief in 2 years. She now says that she is no longer interested in the permanent gig. The job comes with court-ordered supervision for how APD polices communities of color, a reform process that has chewed up and spit out a few chiefs, and citizens who still do not trust that Aurora police are cleaning up their act. APD has spent the past few weeks facing protests after an officer shot and killed an unarmed black man named Kylan Lewis. Aurora has even had trouble keeping candidates as finalists for the police chief job. In 2022, 2 out of the 3 finalists pulled out in the middle of the process after community members rightly noted that Colorado's most diverse city had an all-white slate of contenders to be police chief. Every parent is a work in progress. Ask me, I know. I really respect the parents in Northeast Colorado who have turned to a nonprofit called the Family Resource Center to become stronger moms or dads. And that's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports that nonprofit's work, strengthening families and supporting kids in their community. The Family Resource Center offers parenting classes of all types to support low-income families, parents going through a tough time, grandparents raising grandchildren, families dealing with all types of challenges, because they know that strong parents make strong families, make safe, successful kids. That nonprofit in Sterling also has year-round programs to support at-risk kids, from the summer camp that's going on right now to mentorship and volunteer programs year-round. The Family Resource Center is really well respected in Northeast Colorado as the first stop for families that are facing challenges, looking to get back on the right track with personalized help from that nonprofit's counselors. To join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in supporting their work, scan that QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get the link to donate. Close to 3,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. And what that means is that we've started your recent microgiving campaigns with almost $20,000 for every nonprofit that we feature. That's our starting point. Use that same QR code or text to get there. So if CBI workers knew that their star DNA analyst was cutting corners, if they knew, why did the then head of the Bureau not know? And your good news provides a refreshing start to a brutally hot weekend. We're back with more news, and I'm going to try to get my mouth to work this time. The star DNA scientist at CBI mishandled evidence for years, despite repeated warning signs. The agency now knows Missy Woods' misconduct is impacting hundreds of criminal cases. Somebody accused her of tampering with evidence as far back as 2018. But the CBI director at the time doesn't remember anybody telling him about a disaster in the making. Our Kelly Rinke has that.
A scandal inside CBI's lab was happening for years, but investigators really want to know what people knew back in 2018.
This story kind of blew me away when I heard about it.
You're listening to interviews about the agency's top DNA scientist, Missy Woods.
If ever there was sort of one person who you considered to be an all-star, Missy was probably it.
Former CBI Director John Camper led the agency in 2018 when someone in the lab caught Woods tampering with evidence. The coworker reported it to her bosses, but Director Camper doesn't seem to remember people in the lab telling him about the serious complaint.
If on the other hand, I was informed of any allegations to the extent that I've read about in the news, you can be damn sure that we would have opened up a full investigation.
No internal investigation was launched, and now what Woods is under investigation for today is directly related to what happened in 2018.
We wrote it up and, took it as a one-off.
Because it was a mental health is what we determined, so that's where we set our effort to try to correct was her mental health.
People in the lab attributed the problem in 2018 to Woods' mental health. She was taken off casework for a few months and went to a psychologist.
Well, I went back and I looked at a bunch of previous batches to see if I could see this happen then.
That employee you just heard from reviewed a few months of Woods' work after that complaint. Couldn't find any other issues. Problem is, something was wrong.
A number of examples, and I don't think we're done yet. But I do know that some of those were identified from that 2017-2018 time frame.
So people in the lab told investigators they did update Director Camper, but Camper doesn't recall any conversations about misreporting of data. Woods' attorney told me the lab should have paid attention to the warning sign. She told management she was stressed out, burned out, and they continued to bring her back on and assign her to the most high-profile cases in Colorado.
And when they watched the details of her work after that point, after the intervention?
Investigators say in the internal investigation that they did find many examples of her continuing to do this after they brought her back on. CBI says that she was just so good at concealing her activities from their technical review process.
Wow. Kelly Rinke, thank you.
My good news is that I got all 3 of my kids out on the water today.
How about that? There's good news worth celebrating. A parentally planned activity that actually goes off without a hitch. That's next. Takes courage, you know, to round up the kids, take them for a day on the water at Chatfield, hoping that not one of them melts down at the wrong time. Takes courage, too, for our photojournalist Tom Cole to take his expensive and totally not waterproof camera gear out on the water, too. But he did it for your good news.
Countdown.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
My good news is that my wife just got out of the hospital after 10 days and 5 in ICU for liver failure, and now she's fine.
My good news is my aunt came from California and I brought her to Chatfield to come up here and have her first experience paddleboarding.
My good news is that I found baby crawfish under logs.
My good news is it's 101 degrees out today.
My good news is that we got to come up here to Colorado and see this beautiful scenery up here and meet with a lot of family members on a reunion. And we got to take our grandson all over here fishing. And that's really good news.
My good news is that I got all 3 of my kids out on the water today.
My good news is my sister is visiting me from Portland.
My good news is cooling off in the lake at Chatfield Reservoir.
Yeah, definitely refreshing. The lake's nice and cool. It's nice to be out here.
See, just makes you cooler watching it. Back with your feedback now. Jay rightly points out that I should not have referred to President Biden's mental health when Marshall and I were talking back and forth earlier. As Jay correctly points out, we have and should continue to use terms like mental fitness or mental alacrity. Mental health is a different thing. You're absolutely right, Jay. Debbie says, why are we only focused on Joe Biden and his bad debate and not on Trump's lies, deceit, felonies, etc.? Debbie, here's the thing. We have covered Donald Trump's lies, deceit, policy for years here, quite aggressively, and we will again in the future. Importantly, Republican voters right now have decided that they're okay with all those things from Donald Trump. Democratic voters are in a very short window to decide whether they are comfortable with Joe Biden as their nominee. That is why there is so much focus on him at the moment. Rick says your beard absolutely rocks, and his name is Rick, so he knows beards.